know Brenda Berkman a little bit.
Uh-huh.
And we actually did the first story at Women's eNews, or the only story about a woman firefighter after 9/11 for quite a long time, and that was about Brenda.
And EMTs and all the first responders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also know that Brenda had a lot of difficulty as along the way, and other lawsuits and problems with the fire department. And you seem to have had kind of like smooth sailing.
Right.
So I'm wondering like how you account for the difference.
JoAnn, can I say something first?
Sure.
Okay, because you know, on the subject of oral history, I working with these women for years and doing all different kinds of things as an advocate for them. And JoAnn is the only woman in the book who interviewed me before she agreed to be part of this story. And you know, she wanted to, well, you know, it was fun because we went out for burgers and beer, but you know, she wanted to make sure that I had in mind that I was going to tell the whole story of women in the fire department. And one of her points is that you know, oftentimes the stories that get told are only the really horrific stories and the very difficult stories. And that's why I call this chapter Double Vision, and I have two women with very different experiences to represent those two sides of what happened to women in the fire department. And so it's something to.
All right, I can answer that in a different way. Not having been in Brenda's firehouse, I can tell you exactly why. There are 4 reasons why I didn't have as much of a problem as most of the other women. The number 1 reason was the captain in my firehouse, George Donnelly, ran a tight ship. And he ran a tight ship before I got there. He didn't, you know, some of the officers decided, well, we're going to get a girl, so this is my chance to make the men behave, when he hadn't been making them behave prior to that. But Captain Donnelly, you know, was a by-the-book firefighter, big Irish, tall Irish guy. And, you know, and he ran a tight ship, and, you know, he made sure that the men knew that I needed to be treated fairly, treated not exactly like every other probie. A lot of the hazing that went on I didn't get. So that was why. I really honestly believe that if all of the other women had strong officers, or even in the fact if it wasn't a strong officer, then one of the senior men, because in you know, those, they work together, the officer and the senior man. And you know, even with a weak officer, if the senior man took charge and did what a true professional would have done, then I don't think you would have had those horror stories that you heard about.
That was, you said 4 reasons.
Excuse me?
You said there were 4 reasons.
Oh, you want to know all of them? All right, number 1 was the captain. Number 2 was me, my sense of humor, the fact that I had worked with men before, that I had a thick skin. Also, I think the fact that a lot of what they were saying or may have said went over my head, so they didn't get a reaction. The other thing is I was 32 years old when I went into the firehouse, so I wasn't a young child, and you know, I've been around the block a little bit, but the experience, the 4 years that I'd done at the airport prepared me in a way, working in an all-male environment where you had to prove yourself, you were not necessarily wanted. So, how many is that?
Let me say something. You know, one of the things was that Brenda was a lead plaintiff, so everybody knew her name, and all the demonstrations of thousands of firefighters in the union and the city and all that outside. I mean, until I went into their archives, United Women Firefighters. I mean, I had heard about this stuff, but when you read, you know, the virulent, really amazing stuff. So, you know, she was a lead plaintiff, so that she was like a lightning rod for all this feeling that she was the one that generated all this, and it wasn't going to stand. And then, you know, she had like, instead of having a strong leader, she had one of the biggest harassers who was the head of her house. And, you know, so there are many reasons, but, you know, that's what we try to explain, this, that some women did have very good experiences, and a lot of women had hellish experiences.
And one of the things that bothered me throughout my career was, unfortunately, the the horror stories sell papers, so people would latch onto those, and that was the story that would get out. And in terms of trying to go out and recruit young women for this job, if every time you went out, there was another story about a firefighter, female firefighter who was being harassed or not getting along, that would just set back the recruitment effort. And it really struck home, and this is the incident where I spoke to Jane about it. We were doing a women's history oral project, and we had a good turnout, about 20-something women firefighters sitting in a circle in the room, and we were given the ground rules and the outline of what it was that we were going to do, and we were told each of you will be asked a question, and we'd like to go around the whole circle and let everyone answer that one question, then we'll go around again. Well, that worked for the one turnaround, basically, where you introduced yourself and said you worked in an engine or a truck. But by the time that they went around to the second time, one of the women talked about, even though that wasn't part of the subject of the question, she talked about how terribly she'd been treated in a firehouse, and then all the rules went out the window. The people conducting the interviews wasn't changed.
It was me. No, it was
okay.
3 of us, but the thing, the
Tried to
problem was
get you off the
try
hook.
to control these 20, 30 firefighters. I failed miserably.
Yeah, because
Yes.
then all of the stories were the horror stories,
Yeah.
and I would tell the horror stories, even though whenever I would talk to people, I would say, well, I had it pretty easy, but, and I would give examples of some of the things that happened to other women, and whether or not in some cases, I know you shouldn't blame the victim, but some cases they kind of asked for it. I remember one woman in particular in Phoebe school. I'll give you, at the swearing-in ceremony at wherever it was, I can't remember. But we were sworn in, and we were all really trim in those days. And this one woman, they picked one woman and one man from the class to go up on stage and take the oath of office, ceremonial. They're representing everyone. So they took the oath, and the woman then steps forward and starts doing muscles. And the flash bulbs are popping. I wasn't the woman, okay? But, and I'm sitting in the audience with all the other, men and women that are going into this Probe class in a few days. And I'm sinking down in my seat as I hear around me, what is she doing, look, And all I could think of was, this poor guy, he's up there. This is his moment too. His family is in the crowd, and he's totally being disrespected and all by this particular woman. And sure enough, 20 years they rode her, and she gave back as good as she got, but it could have been so much easier.